We have a massive storm system starting to take shape heading into next week as things start to get very busy with the weather. But for the next couple days, it's on the overall calmer side. Here is the setup going forward. This is your Thursday, November the 14th. And as you see, we've got a ridge across the middle part of the country. A lot of clear skies, actually. It's pretty pleasant light conditions, even though it's definitely colder at night. It definitely warms up during the day with that drier air. We do have some instability that's parked over portions of the Ohio Valley. Nothing severe or anything like that. It's just some light to moderate rain progressing as it moves across towards the northeast, but it is going to hit this high pressure, so it's not going to be allowed to actually enter portions of the northeast and kind of fade off the eastern seaboard. But what we'll be watching is a more significant troughs that will be coming in from the Pacific Northwest, and those will build and amplify, and I think really get going as we start heading into Sunday with more severe threat, but especially as we head into Wednesday of next week. So here's the temperatures this morning. You can actually feel the cool, crisp fall air out there. That's compliments of all the clearer skies draped across the middle part of the country with widespread 30s and 40s, literally from Texas all the way to the Canadian border. It's just where the humidity is, the higher humidity with the surge of moisture out of the Gulf. That's where they're producing some rain showers this morning. But overall, it's pretty pleasant light conditions across a good part of the lower 48. But further south, we are still watching that little blob down there into the Caribbean, which was officially named tropical depression number 19 down there into the Caribbean. And we talked about this yesterday. There's, high pressure keeping it further south, and it's predominantly going to be more over land, producing some very heavy rain into Central America. So it is going to be should get named Sarah, but with the close interaction to land, it's not going to be able to really intensify that much. It just kind of gets, in a low steering currents down there in the Caribbean. And eventually, it's really not until Monday that it makes its way into the Yucatan. And it could be even not until Tuesday or Wednesday before whatever might be left of Sarah that emerges back out into the Gulf of Mexico. But further north, this is Alaska. That's where most of the cold air is right now across that region. And you can definitely see most of the state is actually below zero. So eventually that cold air is finally going to start releasing some of its grip and pull down into the lower 48. And there'll be several pulses of colder air, and I think they'll build over time, but definitely by Wednesday and a reinforcing shot into Friday of next week, it definitely starts to be feeling a lot different than what you've been used to so far with this overall just mild fall. So, but here's the setup going in tomorrow. We'll see the beginning stages. This is your Friday, the 15th here, of a deepening trough that will finally start to release some of that cooler air. So at the beginning, you still got the warm sector. So we're going to be looking at a developing trough that's going to be digging down into the Baja. And as it digs a little bit further, it's going to draw in some of that moisture into the Gulf. So you're still going to be tapping into these warmer temperature anomalies. This is on Sunday. Yeah, you can definitely see a well ahead of the system. It's 15 to 20 degrees above average temperatures for what you would typically be, this time of year. But definitely as it starts to dig, and the further it digs, the stronger it will be. And yes, we will likely set up another area of low pressure highlighted across West Texas. You can see what's left of Sarah down there into approaching the Yucatan, right? But the main system is going to be across portions of Texas into Kansas as well as into Oklahoma. But so by the time we head into Sunday afternoon, some of those could start to turn severe. So we do, in fact, even have a day 4 risk highlighted by the Storm Prediction Center this morning of some of those could produce some of that large hail, damaging winds. And if they are able to turn surface based, they in fact will possible spin up an isolated tornado or two. But the main area of interest would likely be in the San Angelo region, down there in West Texas of Abilene, and approaching the Fort Worth region. And so depending on the timing of this, they went ahead and introduced a day 5 risk for portions of western areas of the DFW Metroplex. This would likely extend into overnight and then during the morning hours on Monday as they move across. So right now they went ahead and issued that slight risk for that day 5 with the evolution as it moves across from west to east. And as it does, it's going to produce heavier rains in a good part of the Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma, and a good part of Kansas. And then further south, you'll have a little bit more instability and more unstable, and that's where they would likely turn severe. And then as they progress across, so there's really not much cold air to speak of as of yet. This would be Sunday heading into Monday, but it's going to be starting to build up here across the Pacific Northwest. That's where we're going to be starting to see some of that colder air finally losing its grip up there in Alaska and finally be able to push further southbound as more blocking starts to take shape over the top, will eventually allow to trap a lot of that cold air underneath. So by the time we head into Tuesday, that progression of that first system would likely be over the Dixie Alley region. So some of these could turn strong to severe as well, as we'll start to have a formidable low pressure center start to develop on the backside as more cold air starts to come in from the northwest down to the southeast. So now you start to get the changeover in the mountain regions again with more snow across that region. And then as we head into Wednesday, I think that's when things really start to get interesting, as we'll start to have a more dynamic trough, more of a massive trough starts to dig in across the southwest. And as it does, it's going to develop a formidable low pressure center again out there in West Texas, across the Panhandle, western Oklahoma, into Kansas, where they just had that all out big time snowstorm just last week. And yeah, we could be talking about more snow across that region, because yes, we have another low pressure center likely going to be forming across West Texas. You can see what's happening here, right? I mean, look at that, folks. That's a 1043 high pressure system. That's definitely some coldest air of the season starting to come in and releasing its grip that finally gets pulled into the lower 48. And as it does, timing is definitely a little bit of uncertainty with the global models, right? So the system's still way offshore, but right now, here's the latest European guidance. Like I mentioned, as we talked about yesterday with that system coming across with Sarah potentially down there into the Caribbean, man, it took a westward shift once they found that closed low. And once they did, wow, it just sent it further inland. And of course, with the storm inland, it's definitely producing big time flooding rains, just intense flooding down there across Central America. And that's likely going to be pushing across the Yucatan. But how strong it will likely be after it comes off of all that and reemerges in the Gulf is yet to be determined. But nonetheless, it's still going to produce the rains like it was back into Florida. So you're still going to get the rains starting on Wednesday heading into Florida, as we'll be watching a more dynamic system start to build further west. New Mexico, the Texas Panhandle, western Oklahoma, areas of Kansas again starts getting to the action, as we definitely have a more formidable low pressure center start to take shape with more cold air that's going to be building in on the backside coming in from that northwest to southeast trajectory. And as it does, it's going to tap into some of that low pressure that's going to produce rain and strong storms on the right side of the system. And then on the left side of the system, you got the cold air. And then look at that, where the purple is, that is likely where snow would likely be on the ground by then. And by the time we head into your Thursday, the 21st timeframe, so this would be next Thursday of what we're talking about. Look at the ridging over the top, folks. That's the trapping of the colder air, with more ridge building over south of Canada trapping that cold air, underneath and trapping those areas of low pressure. So we talked about the timing because here's the GFS, right? So the European is much more progressive with the colder air. So that way, as it pulls through, we'll have it a little bit further south. The GFS isn't, and that doesn't bring it as far south, but it brings it well north. So you still get the snow, but the difference is big time, in the placement of this is actual areas of low pressure, just a little bit more uncertainty. As of right now, of course, we're getting, 6 to 7 days out, right? So, but nonetheless, we could be having some big time snows across the middle part of the country. So we'll have to fine tune this as it goes forward. But yes, we could be definitely looking at a low pressure center with that rain probability, and could just be a minimal tropical storm by then of what was likely be Sarah. But nonetheless, it could bring more snow back into Texas, the western Oklahoma region, as well as into Kansas, back into Nebraska by the time we head into Thursday. And like I told you, with the significance of the timing of this, the GFS on the same time frame doesn't actually have the snow. It has the snow, but it's further north with a more amplified, faster track. So we'll be able to fine tune this a little bit more of detail probably by Saturday, as the storm system would likely enter the west coast by then, and that data gets fed back into the models. But right now we're looking at a pretty significant trough that we'll be digging in. This thing's massive, folks. I mean, that's kind of a rarity to see something like this across the middle part of the country. So that's a very significant trough that typically brings a lot of unsettled weather, a lot of severe weather. It could bring a lot of wind, a lot of rain, and then even that snow, even blizzard conditions. So there's a lot of dynamics Wednesday and Thursday that's moving across the middle part of the country. And we'll definitely be fine tuning. But what's more certain is the cold air is going to get trapped underneath. So as that ridge of high pressure starts to build, you got the Greenland block over the top. You got some of that colder air releasing from Alaska. So they start to warm up, replacing the colder air underneath. So when it comes in on Wednesday and Thursday, it could hang around right through the early part of next week, leading towards your Thanksgiving. So this will likely not go anywhere anytime soon, to be trapped for a good 5 to 6 days, and with an extended cool down definitely on the way for a good part of the central US that will eventually swing into the southeast and overtake a good part of the lower 48. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch my next update where I protect you before and after the storm.